Good stuff. Good morning. Man, during rehearsal this morning, I had this moment because the very first time that I laid eyes on the beautiful Heather Dedeker, it was Wilson at the time. I walked through those doors about 16 years ago, and I'm like, who is that on the stage? And I kind of had that moment this morning, just looking at my wife singing up there, like, oh, I remember that moment. I'm walking in, like, I know everybody in Fredericktown. Who is this girl? So I married her because she wasn't from around here, and I knew I wouldn't be related to her. It's the only reason. Actually, one thing that is kind of cool today is July 5th, 15 years ago to the day, was my very first day on staff at Meadow Heights Church. Isn't that awesome? Yeah, today's my 15th year anniversary. Man, it has been an awesome experience. I just want to say, serving along some of my best friends and serving along you guys, and it's been wonderful. And I know it sounds like a resignation. It's not. Another 15 years looking good. But I just thought that was cool today as I'm heading in, like, wow, 15 years. All the things that we've seen take place in the last 15 years, I can't wait to see what takes place in the next 15. And it's good to see all of you guys today. Most of you look like you are from the county of Madison. I know the city, we're having some power issues right now, so let's pray for Kelly and all of her crew as they try to get those on. So everybody in here today is from the county. Nobody from the city woke up and made it in. Oh, we have a couple from the city. Of course, Ross Kelly's from the city too, but let's be praying for you guys and your crews out there as they get that power back on. We know how challenging that is, especially warm weather like this. But glad you guys are here. And those of you that are online with us today, at the top of the video out there, you'll see all kinds of links that will help you engage with this gathering today. And many things are different around here as we're doing kind of our touchless gathering. So the giving, of course, there's offering buckets at the back of the room if that's how you guys give. Many of you guys are giving online now, which is phenomenal. Thank you guys for giving that way. Guests on our Meadow Heights app, there's a little icon. You can click on that. Let us know that you're here. We're glad that you're here today. Normally, we would give you a t-shirt, a gift back there in the back, but we can at least send you an email and give you some more information about the church. And I know, we've got people, it's a pretty diverse church family that we have, and we say that we love it that way, that we're all at different places across the spectrum of everything going on in our country today. Just remember that there's people here who are continuing to social distance for whatever that health reasons or whatever that might be. And so remember, in our touchless gatherings, before you go up and hug somebody, be sure that they want a hug from you, that we want to be sure to honor each other's space in that way as we continue to move on. I'm glad that we get to gather. It's awesome that we get to do that, but I'm a hugger, and I just want to go hug everybody. And I'm like, okay, everybody may not want a hug from me, so I'm just doing some elbow tapping at times, but we're still trying to practice that and be respectful of that. And it's great, especially like Bev, where you can be in here, and to know that this is a safe place where you can come and be, because not every place is like that in the community, but we're glad that you feel comfortable in coming in here. So don't all rush and give Bev a hug, which we all want to do. We're doing that through prayer, okay? So, but it's great that we can do that. Well, let's jump in. CWAC, do we have CWAC numbers? Josh, do we have updates of that? We do? All right, let's see our total. Our goal was 2,500 items for Cause Without a Concert. 3,446 items turned in across all the locations. That's awesome. So I love this because this year it's usually Concert with a Cause, and way back in the day it was our Meadow Heights Top 10, and that thing's moved from like us just celebrating our favorite songs. It's kind of gravitated towards, let's do something cause-oriented with that. Let's give back to the community. And this year's the first year we haven't had a concert in I don't even know how long. And it's awesome that we can still do the cause. So 2,500 items that's going to push back against hunger in our local communities. And really, the local communities they've kind of depended on us during this time of year because they're kind of forgotten, and we wanted to continue to rally around them. So almost 3,500 items. Thank you guys for continuing to do that. Many people shipped them straight to the office. That was fun to see boxes upon boxes showing up at the office that way, but awesome that we could still rally around them in that way. Well, get off your donkey. Week 5, talking about making it count today. And in 1972, the movie that many consider the greatest motion picture of all times hit theaters. Here's a quote from the movie. If you can finish this quote. It means you probably watched this movie, okay? I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse, right? You know that movie. That's a quote from the movie. That's Marlon Brando, who played the Godfather in the movie Godfather, right? But the main character wasn't the Godfather. It was actually his son. Do you guys know who played his son? Al Pacino. Pacino, who went on to be, one of the, if not the greatest actors of his generation. But did you know that Al Pacino was not the original person they offered that role to? Wasn't. You know who it was? Jack Nicholson. Right. Jack Nicholson, you guys know him. He did okay in his career, I guess. But when he was asked why he turned it down, he said, I think Italians should just be played by Italians. I don't know, Jack. I think that's an offer you probably shouldn't have refused, right? And then there's another one here. Han Solo was played by Harrison Ford, right? You know who they offered that role to originally? Tom Selleck. Tom Selleck, man, Harrison Ford with the big mustache, that would be probably not quite the same Han Solo. I guess he was too busy Magnum PI and stuff. So, and then here's one last one of a missed opportunity. I thought this was a great one. Gandalf in Lord of the Rings was offered originally to Sean Connery. That was the original person. Not only did they offer it to him, but they offered it to him with 15% of the profits of all the movies in the series. That would have gotten him around $400 million in profits so far. And when they offered it to Connery, he said, I just didn't get the story. I don't know. Hobbit finds ring. Evil forces want ring. Hobbit must destroy ring. Gandalf helps Hobbit. Sean Connery gets $400 million. Seems like a pretty simple plot to me. But it's a huge missed opportunity. And today, as we finish this series, Get Off Our Donkey, we've been looking about this one of the most famous stories of all times that Jesus told. The story of the Good Samaritan, which was also about some missed opportunities that took place. And we know that this story isn't just a story for us doing good for other people. It started out with this in response to this question: what must I do to inherit eternal life? And this wasn't just what must I do to get to heaven. It was about how do I experience the abundant life that God has for me starting now. This story is ultimately about us living life the way it was meant to be lived. Now, it would be easy for us to miss something in this story. It'd be easy for us to miss the invitation in the story if we didn't close it out with this last conversation between Jesus and the guy that asked the question that got this story started in the first place. So after telling the story, Jesus looks at the guy who asked the question. This is what he says. He says, which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. And Jesus told him, go and do likewise. 4 powerful words. Go and do likewise. Say that with me. Go and do likewise. See, when Jesus says go here, he's not saying, hey, as you go through your life, when you get a chance, maybe, do something good. That's not what Jesus is saying. There's no way that this guy could walk away from this and go, man, that Jesus, he's such a good teacher. He's a good communicator. I like that guy. He really gets me thinking sometimes. This was an immediate call to action, an ongoing action. What he's saying is go and do likewise and keep on going and do likewise and keep on going and do likewise. Like Leslie talked to us last week. Get off your donkey and stay off your donkey. So how does this guy respond to this? Massive question. How do I live the life that I'm supposed to live? What does that look like? Jesus says, go and do likewise. Do you know what he does? We don't know. Isn't that crazy? We don't know. The story just ends. We don't know if the guy actually does go and do likewise or not. I mean, the stakes are high in this story, and we don't know what happens. Did he or did he not miss out on this incredible opportunity that Jesus gave him in this response of go and do likewise? We don't know. But I think that's actually really good. Because although we don't know what he did when he heard this story, I think the important thing is not focusing on what he did, but when we hear this story, what are we going to do? How do we respond to that? Author Don Everts, I love this quote. He said, there's something refreshing and honest and real about the words go and do likewise. They are like a door flung open in the winter, ushering cold, brisk gospel air into the stuffy, warm house of cultural Christianity. I love that. They wake me up. They remind me that Jesus isn't just my blessed Savior, but my insistent Lord. And they point me to the wonderful news that Jesus wants more for me than right answers and elegant theology. He wants me to get caught up in God's work all around me. And he wants me to be, in a word, missional. And if you've been around here very long, you've probably only heard us say that word about 1,000,000 times. Missional. To be on mission, to go, to be sent. And we look at scriptures and we see that God is a God who sends, constantly sending. He sent his image, he sent his promise, he sent messengers, he sent his word, he sent his son, he sends his spirit. And guess what? He's sending us to bring his kingdom into this broken world who needs it more and more. So, someone who is missional is someone who is sent. And that is how we go and do likewise. We are sent by our Creator to be missional, on mission together. It's why this conversation over the last year, we've been talking about these missional practices, these relational practices that we put into our life every day so we can go out and live a blessed life and bless the world, right? The begin with prayer, the listen to people and places around us, the being intentional with our eating and meal sharing and finding out how to serve somebody else and serving them. And then eventually you could also share your story and God's story, his great story, maybe how their story intersects that story. It's a beautiful thing. It's one of the things I loved about being back in our gatherings. One of the things I really missed was being able to hear those blessed stories. It's been fun that we've been able to share those blessed stories over the last several weeks. And I'm so glad that we get to gather in person because what happens in this room is important. It's not just, we'll just catch this online every weekend. No. Like, you guys are glad to be back, right? Like, online was fun, kind of. For those of us putting it on, maybe not as much. But it was fun, but it's so much better to be back in person, and what we do in this place matters. But when we come in here and when we leave, we're not just going back to like our homes and our schools and just like, this is some great music that we got, a little bit of inspiration so we can just kind of make it through for another week till we get back in here next week and get inspired again, right? When we gather to scatter. That's the whole point. We come in here and we gather, and then we scatter on mission together. And we come back in here the next weekend, and we scatter on mission together. Go and do likewise. That's the beauty of both and. Think of it like an airport. It's kind of vacation season for a lot of people. Why do people go to an airport? Anybody know? To get on a plane and travel, to go somewhere, right? We don't go to the airport just to go to the airport like it's a destination. Man, I'm so glad I'm here. Be here the next 4 hours and I'm going to head back home. Nobody does that. We go to the airport so we can go to a destination. And our gatherings are like that in a similar way. Like we gather here, but we gather here to be inspired, yes, to gather together and to hear what God's up to in our world and how we're being a part of it. But we're here so we can go somewhere else, which is back into our community and to live and love like Jesus. Live the life that Jesus taught and modeled. Where? Wherever we live, work, learn, and play. Wherever we go. Whose neighbor are you? Who are you being a neighbor to? One of my favorite recent stories of the people gathering and scattering is a story of a man named James. I don't know if some of you know James. This is James. Not there, that's a donkey. That's James. That's James. He was a homeless man in St. Francis County. And last fall, our story began to interject with James's story whenever one of our Heitzers, who was beginning her day with prayer, God, show me where your work, where I can get engaged, how you can use me in some way. She got off her donkey, pulled over, and talked to James. And James was living in a tent right next to Rural King. Many of you might have seen his tent there. It was there for a long time. It's a great big dome tent right there in the middle of Farmington. So she pulled over, stopped, got off her donkey, and that conversation ended up inviting James to Meadow Heights. James came to Meadow Heights, and that's where I ended up in a conversation with James. And I had coffee with him nearly every week. And you know what I got to do? Listen. I just got to listen to his story, to his past, his stint in prison a couple times, his current situation. And we just got to talk, and I got to listen and find out what are his needs. And to ask him, James, do you want to be homeless? No. Would you like to have somewhere to stay? Yes. Would you like to have a job? Love to. Love to work hard. So I got to listen to him and know what was going on in his life. And then there were meals involved, because next thing you know, boxes of food were being dropped off to him. He's starting to come. He asked for nothing. And people begin to love on him and share food with him. He went to lunch with Heitzers. CC's community Christmas dinner invited him in and gave him a place to eat. And then while we were working on a job and a place for him to stay and those kind of things, people just began to serve him. We knew what he wanted and what he needed. So people began to serve him. It was awesome to see law enforcement stopping by just to check on James, making sure he was okay. The business owner that owned the property right there, it was not a place for homeless people to be camping. That wasn't what it was. But he said, hey, if this local church is working with him and trying to get him off, we're just going to let him stay there. So he put a big post out, guys, it's okay. He's safe. This local church is working with him. Just want you to know, yes, I do know there's somebody working there. A local fuel station let us set up a little card where it was James's card. And what we found out is as long as he's a paying customer, he could go in there at midnight in December when it was freezing cold. He could get a hot cup of coffee because he's a paying customer. And they were glad to have him in there. And people went by and put more money on the card. One of our Heitzers got off his donkey, went and picked him up, gave him a haircut and a shave. He looked a little less homeless after that. And a gentleman from our Farmington location gave him some pretty sweet kicks. He had some old Nike Airs. So it was cool seeing James walk around. Every time I meet him for coffee, James comes strutting in. He's got these Nike Airs on. It was awesome to see that. And people would give him blankets and coats and clothes. And one of our Go Kids, an 8-year-old, he went and spent his own money on these little cans of fuel that would allow him to run his heater in his tent. Went by and dropped those off to him. It was awesome to see that. He also got to hear the story, other people's story, and the story of Jesus. You know why? Because people picked him up every single day, every single Sunday, brought him to Meadow Heights and took him home, picking him up. Where's he at now? So where is James? Well, he met a gal. He's moved to Arkansas. He's married. What? I know, right? He's married. And to top it all off, a few Sundays ago, my family and I drove down to Conway, Arkansas, near Little Rock, and we picked up James and his wife, Amy, and we took him down to Conway Lake at their request, and we baptized him. Here's the picture or video of that. She was nervous. She can't swim, so the lake was a little nervous for her. Bit of water in the ear. Hey. What a cool experience to be a part of, all because a community of believers gathered and scattered on mission, getting off their donkey day in and day out. And I know it doesn't always turn out that way, but this one did, right? And I'll admit, it wasn't easy for me to get off my donkey every week and spend time with James. I hung out at his tent. We went to a coffee shop a lot of times. It was inconvenient. It took time. It cost money. I put 1,000,000 miles on my vehicle, taking him back and forth to work. But we shared a lot of conversations, and we shared some life. And I'm so stinking glad that I did. And it wasn't that my contribution helped change his story and his life by getting off my donkey. It also changed my life by getting off my donkey to go and do likewise. And all the Heitzers that were a part of that, the ones that I knew, they were really, really glad that they did. What an awesome example of that. So as we wrap up this story of the Good Samaritan that Jesus tells, and remember, this isn't just a story, it's an invitation. That's what it is. An invitation to a way of living, an invitation to respond to Jesus' go and do likewise. What's at stake in all that? What does that look like? I got a movie clip that I think will help us wrap our heads around that decision today and what that's going to be. Man, I loved that part of that movie. I wasn't a big Lord of the Rings fan, but I remember when I got to that part, I was like, ooh, it's worth fighting for. Sam talks about an opportunity to play a part in a truly great story, for our life story to become part of a much bigger story that'll be told for generations. Is that good? Donald Miller, another one of my favorite authors, he writes about, a lot of times he writes about better stories for our lives, living a better story. And he says, in a great story, there's always someone who wants something, who has to struggle to find it, to fight and overcome obstacles to get it. So when I read something like that, it begs the question, what do you want? Like, what do you want? What are you working hard for? What are you struggling for? And I love this question. Would it make a great movie? Donald Miller says, he says, Bob may really want a Volvo, but who really cares if Bob gets a Volvo or not, right? That's not a movie that I want to go see about Bob getting a Volvo. Nothing wrong with wanting a Volvo. Nothing wrong with getting a Volvo. But it doesn't bring me to tears when that salesman hands Bob the keys to the Volvo. It doesn't send chills up my spine when Bob drives off in that Volvo like, oh man. I love what Miller says in this book. He said, nobody cries at the end of a movie about a guy who wants a Volvo, but we spend years actually living those stories and expect our lives to be meaningful. The truth is, if what we choose to do with our lives won't make a story meaningful, it won't make a life meaningful either. Isn't that good? We get one life. One life. Make it count. Like in the movie, in a world where there's present darkness, when it seems like the story's not going to work out the way it's supposed to, like the right's not going to be made, or like, oh man, selfishness and greed, they're the things that are winning out. Or when people just decide to stay on their donkey in their nice little homes or comfort or whatever it is, it's in a world like that that an incredible story shines bright. And I want a go and do likewise part in this story. A story where it seems impossible, where the ones that make a difference, the unlikely, and they make it because they didn't turn back, they didn't give up on the world, they didn't give up on the people in the world. A story where the unlikely and the ordinary characters of the story make a world-changing, outcome-altering difference with their lives. That's the story I want to live. A story that'll be remembered not because we're so courageous or so determined or so brave, but because we're what we're holding on to, because Jesus says, go and do likewise. And you know what the go and do likewise is? A call to God's dream for this world. A dream of goodness and beauty and harmony and love and truth. And that story is worth fighting for. That's why we believe in what we talk about, developing people who live and love like Jesus around here. You know why? Because ultimately what we feel like happens is they become people who live and love like Jesus, and that will become an unstoppable force that changes our world. And there is good in the world. You know why? God created it. It is His. And we, as disciples of Jesus, are sent into this world to make a difference. If we will, go and do likewise. Right? Let me pray before we go. Father, your goodness today, through your words and through this simple story that we see so many times, your goodness seems so apparent. The hope feels tangible. And God, I just pray that as we head out of this place today, that we don't walk away with just feeling challenged, but we walk away with this choice hanging in the balance of, will I go and do likewise, and go and do likewise, and go and do likewise. God, you're good. You didn't have to invite us into the story, but you do. And all of us in this place today, God, our lives have been changed in some way by this incredible story. Help us each day to lean into it, to lay down or bring our wants to you, and to offer those to you, Lord, and to be able to take your wants and desires and live those out in a tangible way. God, help us to live and love like you. We ask this in your name. Everybody said? Amen. Amen. You know, I thought